There have been plenty of wild and wonderful gimmick matches in WWE over the years, with the company all too keen to bring the best of them back time and time again. Not everyone can be a winner, however, and some of their gimmick or stipulation offerings are done after just one attempt. Whether the initial try was just so terrible that it had to be removed from existence before it could do further harm to the general public, or time and tastes simply changed too much for them to resurface later, there are some very rare WWE match types that may have disappeared but left a lasting, often hilarious legacy. I'm Adam Pacitti from Cultaholic Wrestling, and these are 10 wild WWE match types only seen once. Join us. Number 10, the Good Housekeeping match. The Attitude Era was gimmick match central, with every week seemingly unearthing some new, usually wacky concept. Whether it was a random episode of Raw or a major pay-per-view, the odds were there would be some sort of unique stipulation on offer, often one that was directly related to a storyline or wrestler's gimmick itself. Case in point, the Good Housekeeping Intercontinental title match at No Mercy 1999, which saw Jeff Jarrett defend the strap against Chyna in a bout where both could only use weapons that are objects found inside the home. This came about as Double J had been on a chauvinistic tear, claiming that women needed to stay in their domestic space and away from the squared circle, something that the ninth wonder of the world naturally took offense to. The match itself was actually a pretty good one and saw everything from a toilet seat and salad tongs to an ironing board and yes, the actual kitchen sink itself get deployed before Jarrett thought he'd won it with a sneaky belt shot before Teddy Long restarted the match since a title belt isn't a household object and Chyna won with a guitar shot, which apparently is. Number 9, the Extreme Elimination Chamber match. The Elimination Chamber has been one of WWE's most successful and long-lasting gimmick match inventions since it was unearthed at the 2002 Survivor Series. Combining elements of Hell in a Cell and War Games while still being its own thing, the Chamber sustained its impressive aura, at least for a while. While the Chamber itself may have gotten an aesthetic update from time to time, the only time the rules have properly been changed is when the steel structure was used at the disastrous December to Dismember pay-per-view. On that night, the Elimination Chamber became extreme due to the fact it was taking place on an ECW pay-per-view. The selection of weapons that were tied to the chains, from a standard steel chair to a barbed wire baseball bat, gave the combatants plenty of toys to play with and make the match a memorable one. Regrettably though, the Extreme Elimination Chamber match landed on the lower end of the scale as far as chamber matches at the time were concerned, but it was a good idea in principle, even if WWE didn't agree and only did it the one time. Number 8, the Duchess of Queensbury rules match. One of the nice things about reigning as commissioner for William Regal is that he could just about make any match that he bloody well pleased. So when Chris Jericho humiliated and then beat him to retain the Intercontinental title at WrestleMania X7, the battling Brit pulled out the big guns and challenged Y2J to a Duchess of Queensbury rules match at Backlash. You reap what you piss, Chris. Nobody knew what the heck the rules were going into the contest besides the Crooked Commish and the Duchess, played by WWE office worker and Warrior Award recipient Sue Aitchison, who was stationed on a throne at ringside. Essentially, Regal and the Duchess were able to change the rules as the match was in progress, thwarting Jericho's attempts at securing victory. The first round time limit conveniently expired after he hit a lion salt, and submissions suddenly didn't count when Sir William tapped out to the walls. Regal eventually got the win after smashing his luckless opponent over the head with a chair, the original disqualification being overturned by that royal pain in the backside. Number 7, the Las Vegas Showgirl match. A year and a half after the Duchess of Queensbury screwjob, as I call it, Regal was involved in another one-off stipulation match, only this time he wasn't the commissioner and was left to the mercy of the Raw Roulette wheel. This was the very first episode of Raw Roulette, the kayfabe creation of Red Brand general manager Eric Bischoff. While we got that classic TLC main event out of it, we were also treated to a blindfold match, a bra and panties paddle on a pole match, and the Las Vegas Showgirl match. For it, both Regal and Goldust had to compete while dressed as Sin City entertainers, which naturally infuriated the blue-blooded Englishman. Though the character was seething, the man behind the gimmick was having the absolute time of his life, and later revealed on an episode of Table for Three that it was the most fun he'd ever had in his decades-long career. WWE did do a Las Vegas Showgirl Lumberjill match when Raw Roulette returned in 2013, but that was basically just the then divas standing at ringside wearing funny hats, so it doesn't count, and if you have a problem with that, feel free to come and fight my dad. Number 6, the Raw Bowl. WWE and American football. What could possibly go wrong? Oh, right. Well, many years before WWE were pissing away a small fortune by trying to launch the XFL, twice, the closest they got to the hand egg field was either by booking its stars such as Lawrence Taylor, WrestleMania main eventer, or by doing weird stuff like the Raw Bowl. The first, and thankfully last Raw Bowl, took place on the January 1st, 1996 edition of WWE's flagship, and was done to capitalize on college football's Bowl Week madness. It was, in essence, a 4-team elimination match with the Smoking Guns, Yokozuna and Owen Hart, Savio Vega and Razor Ramon, and Sid and 1-2-3 Kid, vying for the prestigious Steve Lombardi Trophy. Everything was dressed up to be like the NFL, including the ring, referee Earl Hebner, and the wrestlers themselves, who wore jerseys for combat. There were also ringside cheerleaders, a marching band, and each team was afforded a timeout, while a wrestler had to make actual physical contact with an opponent before he was allowed to tag out. An all-time fumble. Number 5, the Gulf of Mexico match. One of the low-key highlights of WWE ECW was the program between CM Punk and Chavo Guerrero over the ECW title. It was a feud that actually yielded several highlights, but is probably best remembered for the non-title meeting between the pair on the February 5th, 2008 episode of ECW on Sci-Fi. Taking advantage of being in Corpus Christi, Texas on the day, WWE booked Chavito and the Straight Edge Superstar in a Gulf of Mexico match. The rules were simple in that there weren't any rules, but the match could only end when one man had thrown the other into the nearby Gulf. Bob Holly and Al Snow had previously taken a trip to the Mississippi River at Backlash 99, and John Cena famously chucked Edge into the Long Island Sound in 06, but this was the first time the objective of a match was for one man to give another a very unwanted early bath. Punk scored the win by GTSing Guerrero after they almost got run over by a passing car into the water. Number 4, the Thong Stinkface match. The epic feud between the Cat and Terry Runnels needed a suitably cinematic payoff. They had waged war for the best part of half a year and had even collided at WrestleMania 2000, but come SummerSlam it was time to put the rivalry to bed. Which I'm sure is literally how Jerry Lawler would have settled things had he been booking his then-wife's storylines. The finale we got was kinky enough, mind you, as the bickering beauties faced off in a Thong Stinkface match. Can you believe there was only ever one of these? They got there after the Cat helped Rikishi back that thing up on her enemy, with Terry responding in kind and giving Cat a whiff in retaliation. To settle things once and for all, one of these ladies was going to have to don the dental floss undies and rub their backside in the face of the other, just like Lou Thez and Buddy Rogers did all those years ago. The Kings misses one by giving the horny little she-devil an up-close and personal view of her copper penny. I'm really sorry. Number 3, the barbed wire steel cage match. Everyone and their stupid mother could tell that John Cena was going to dethrone WWE champion JBL at WrestleMania 21 weeks if not months before it happened. The Boston rapper was the hot new thing, and the tall Texan's reign of tyranny was due to end, making his defense against the Big Show at No Way Out 2005 seem arbitrary at best. WWE, to their credit, added intrigue by employing a match type never seen before or since. To prevent the champ's cabinet members from interfering and from JBL himself simply running away from his comeuppance, SmackDown GM Teddy Long booked them in a barbed wire steel cage match, with the sharp stuff surrounding the top of the structure. Interestingly, the match took place in the state of Pennsylvania, where the use of barbed wire in pro wrestling matches was banned by their athletic commission. Good job this is sports entertainment then, isn't it, pal? Realistically, what was Pennsylvania going to do? Ban WWE from their state? Anyway, the barbed wire didn't even really come into play during an average match that was saved by a novel finish, as JBL was chokeslammed through the ring and only escaped, and thus won, by fluke. Number 2, the Kennel from Hell match. On paper, the sound of a cage match taking place inside Hell in a Cell while ravenous dogs patrol the area between the two structures sounds like wonderfully demented fun. In practice, the Kennel from Hell debacle was one of the most embarrassing misfires to ever take place on a WWE WWE pay-per-view. Al Snow and the Big Boss Man were the unfortunate fellas put inside the so-called kennel, the natural conclusion to a storyline that had seen the prison guard cook and feed the head case's chihuahua to him. God, I love pro wrestling. A Vince Russo special, the match could only end when one man had somehow managed to escape the cages and evade the hungry Rottweilers waiting for them at ringside. The threat of getting completely bitten was completely removed when it became apparent that the mutts weren't properly trained and had no intention of doing what they were supposed to do. I mean, why attack a mid-carder when you can pee on the floor and lick another dog's butt? Speaking of licking butts, this match licked a butt and then some, not even having the decency to fall into the so bad it's good territory. Number 1, the Concrete Crypt match. The Undertaker has been tasked with facing all manner of opponents in all different kinds of out there gimmick matches, but the Concrete Crypt might just edge the rest as far as the wackiest is concerned. After Paul Heyman and the Dudleys kidnapped Paul Bearer, a handicap match was booked for the Great American Bash, where, if the dead man lost, his manager/father would be buried alive in a glass of cement. No pressure then. The match itself was a sluggish bore that was overshadowed by the fate of a man's life hanging in the balance, with the camera continuously cutting back to Bearer sitting in the crypt as it filled up with what looked like prison oatmeal. In reality, everything involving Bearer had been filmed earlier in the day, and William Moody was actually on a plane back home while the show was in progress. A body double was employed for the benefit of the live crowd, not that it mattered all that much because the whole thing was so overwhelmingly naff anyway. Taker won, of course, but decided to murder his old man regardless, for reasons never fully explained. I suppose he did it for a laugh, the cheeky prankster.